right, how you doing out there? Dave Hill coming back at you with more lessons for the intermediate advanced level of the single string guitar course. So thank you for tuning in. I know you've worked really hard on all those previous lessons we've been giving you, and you've been learning a lot, but there's a lot more to learn on these next lessons. So I want you to really keep practicing hard and review what we've covered, because we're going to build on all that information and really take off and kick it up a notch on these next 40 lessons. So thank you for tuning in. We're going to get into a lot more styles. We're going to start exploring some styles. We're going to turn you on to some cool blues stuff and some great country stuff. Maybe even get into a little bit of jazz and maybe some hybrid techniques with finger picking and playing with your pick together. I'm going to show you some open tuning stuff at some point, and we're just going to have a lot of fun with it, a lot of different things, but I think you're really going to enjoy these next 40 lessons. So stick around and tune up your guitars, and I'll see you in just a second. Okay. Okay, so I was just kind of having a little fun with an interval on that warm-up exercise and just kind of showing you how musical it can be. Okay, so you might recall from our last lessons, we've studied intervals for technique. Okay, we've studied intervals of thirds and fourths and even fifths. And what do I mean by intervals? Well, an interval is simply describing the distance between two musical pitches. So an interval of a major third is the distance between one note and the next note, and this is referring to a major third, so it's a major third apart in a major scale. So the major third above C would be E. 1, 2, 3 notes above E, or a major third. Okay, and we also learned that if it's a diatonic sequence of major thirds, is every third note of a major scale. In this case, a diatonic major third sequence in the key of C sounds like this. And you can see what I'm doing. It's every third note of the major scale in one position looks like this. So we learned those in the last video lessons. We even learned some other ones. We learned fourths, which is obviously every fourth note. We even learned fifths. Okay, so we had a lot of fun with those, and they all have their own unique technical challenge and musical effect, okay? So what we're going to learn today, though, is going up one more interval distance. We're going to go to a major 6 interval, okay? So listen to how these sound. Okay, aren't those pretty? They have a real nice harmonic kind of consonance to them. It's because they essentially sort of outline the sound of an inverted third. Okay, if you think about this C right here and this A, this is a 6 interval, but if you take the C up an octave, you have essentially another third above, so it's just an inverted third. That's why they sound like implied chords, just like the thirds do. Right? So they're the same, they have the same effect as major thirds do, only they're wider. But they're a little more challenging to play because you skip over some of the strings. Okay, so let's take a look at what these would look like on our board back here. Okay, so I've taken the time to write these out, and you can see I've done it in notation and in tab. Okay, so let's do it slowly so you can see what it's all about. Okay, so it's starting on C. let's just make sure, of course, that we know which pattern we're talking about. I didn't even talk about that, but we learned this pattern back in our lessons. It's pattern, the C major scale pattern from the E form of the cage system that's now a movable shape, we know, like this. Okay, so that's the pattern I'm using for this first sequence. Okay, so let's get back to this now. So every sixth note, right? Those are the first 6 notes I just played. 1, 6, 2, 7, 3, root, 4, 9, 5, 10. I'm talking about the interval. That's the 10th. It's the same as the third up an octave, and so on, right? So as I keep going, and then I end up right here, okay, which corresponds to these notes right here. Okay, so let's do that together. Read along with me. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is once again good for technique, good for your alternate picking, and also just a nice musical sequence to have in your vocabulary. Now, if you wanted to go backwards with this sequence, which I think you should, all you have to do is just go from right to left to reverse the note. So you could just take the C, play that first, and then play the E, and then go to the B, and play the D, play the A, and then the C, and just reverse it. So you have this. Okay, so when you put it together now, you're going to have this. Okay, so that's really a good one for your warm-up. I want you to do that now for the next, next week at least. Just practice it every day with the metronome, like this. 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that's really good for your right hand. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little variation that you might want to kind of pick up. And listen to the difference I'm going to give it now. Okay, now what am I doing there that's a little different? Okay, all I'm doing is I'm just taking every other set of notes here, and I'm reversing the order. So I go up a 6, and then I take, instead of go back down to the D and go up a 6, I take the next note here and I play it first, and then I play the lower note. So I reverse the order of these two notes. Basically every other pair of 2, I reverse the order. So that goes C, A, then B, D, and then E, C, and then D, D, F. So that's kind of a variation of the idea of major 6, but it's a nice variation. Okay, now you can even go one note higher because there's 2 notes left here, so I like to do that. Okay, so make that your practice for the next at least week, and you get a lot out of it. And eventually, you want to move it into other positions of your major scales, right? You're going to want to learn it in all the different corresponding caged chord systems. Okay, so I've just shown it to you in pattern, the E form of our major scale system. Okay, so let's work on that for a few weeks now, and I'm going to show you some other stuff now. So let's take a break, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Let's talk about what we're going to do now, because we've spent a lot of time in our last lessons opening up the doors to a variety of things that you can use when you're soloing. And one of the big things that we covered on our last 40 lessons was the idea of major pentatonics and minor pentatonics, okay? We also, of course, learned other things like major scales, minor scales, and arpeggios and all that kind of thing. But we're going to continue to work on pentatonics because they are so useful in playing so many different kinds of music. Okay, so let's review the 5 pentatonics that we learned in our last course, and we're going to expand on those and give you some other challenges to practice with them. So I've taken the time to write out our pentatonic scales right here. These are all the way that I have the notes circled. Those are the roots of the minor pentatonic scale. So let's pretend that these are all in the key of E. So this is all E minor pentatonic, okay? So the circled notes imply the root, okay? So our first position is right there. And we start with our first finger on the E, and we know this pattern. I know that you've learned it, but let's review it. And then continuing down. Okay? Now, here's what I want to talk about with pentatonics. Pentatonics are great because they're very easy to see and they feel really comfortable under our hands, but what happens with a lot of guitar players is guitar players kind of get stuck in playing in positions with pentatonics. They sort of get in one position and they sort of make a big part of their soloing just in 1 or 2 positions, and there's really 5 shapes, as you can see here. So we don't want to always just stick in E. I mean, that's all cool and everything, that's great, but that's not the only place that you can play music in E minor pentatonic. So what I want to do is make sure that we have a way to practice all 5 of them, and we get used to moving through the patterns, okay? So let's review a couple more, and then I'm going to show you some techniques on how you can get better at sliding and moving between patterns. Okay, so the next shape would be right here. Here's our octaves, and the roots are right there. So here's our scale. Oops, I forgot one note. Let me fill that in. Okay, so that's the one that fits nicely right here. Okay, now that's great. Even if we just had 2, we could do a lot. But I'm gonna connect one more here, and then we're gonna make a little game out of sliding between them. Okay, so here's the next position. Okay, so that's based off this form. Okay, so that's 3 positions in a row of E minor pentatonic. We've just kind of figured out there's obviously 2 more, but let's just play around with these 3. Okay, so let's say the idea was to only play a few notes in each position of pentatonic before we have to move to another position. So if we start on the lowest note we could play here and play up, let's say 4 notes. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to now, instead of play the E here, we're going to play the E here and make a position shift. Right? Now we're going to play maybe 3 notes before we slide to the next position. Right? So that's essentially the same as staying in this position and getting to that note. Okay, so you might be saying, well, what's the big deal? Why don't you just stay in that position and just play up to that note if that's what you want to do? The thing of it is, you hear how you can slide between the notes and it sort of has a little bit cooler kind of feel to it? Right? Pentatonics are only 5-note scales, so you have to do a lot to kind of dress them up, and the sliding thing really helps out, okay? And not only does it help out making it sound, it also gives you an opportunity to sort of move up the neck and get good at practicing shifting between them so that you can come up with different ways of making up licks, right? And not getting stuck in patterns, okay? Let me try something else. Right? There's all kinds of ways I'm kind of moving between. Okay? So sticking strictly in pentatonics, you can make a lot of interesting melodies and kind of sounds by just moving between them. Okay? So what I've got here now to practice doing this is a simple progression that is perfect for E minor. Right? Nice chords. Would be very easy to play the whole E minor scale, but we're just going to limit ourselves to E minor pentatonic, okay? And it's going to be a vamp on this section until I cue it, and then we're going to go to the B section where it gets into this bluesy thing. And that's going to take us into the blues pentatonic sound of G blues, okay? So we're going to shift key there for a minute, but for the most part, we're going to be in E minor pentatonic, okay? And I'm just going to play around with this concept now, and I want you guys to practice it along with me, okay? So here we go. This is what it sounds like. Remember, I'm just going to use pentatonics and slide between the patterns. 3, 4. The G part. All right. So there you have it. You know, I just wanted to show you that it's not always about having fancy scales and trying to play a lot of jazzy things and inside, outside stuff and lots of notes. Sometimes it's just about taking simple melodies and doing a lot to ornament them and make them sound soulful. And sometimes those sliding things that you can do with pentatonics can be so soulful, okay? I really like the way people like Robin Ford play because he just does a lot with, well, he does a lot with all kinds of things. He's this great master player, but a lot of the things that sound so great to me about his playing are the fact that he just makes every note just speak and sound so wonderful, and that has a lot to do with how he slides between notes. Okay, so I'm going to let you play on this, and I'm going to see you on the next lesson. Practice those major 6 intervals, and I'll see you in next week's lesson. All right, here we go. 3, 4. Sound good?